podcast out with living legend Bob Boudreau. Bob is a vet of our industry, the staffing industry, but this podcast is for leaders. Bob definitely shares his journey through the ranks and the importance of being curious, but I think what's engaging about the podcast is there's a lot of lessons within it, especially leadership lessons, but it's also a fun listen. Bob's an awesome storyteller, and we actually talked about it a little bit about that before and after the podcast. So enjoy. This is a good one, and I think you're gonna love it. Check it out. And just like that, Mr. Bob Boudreau, we're live. Cheers.
Cheers, Mark. Cheers. Nice to see you.
Yeah, and great seeing you. Thanks for coming on Beers and Careers.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt Delaney.
Matt Delaney, my son-in-law.
My high school hockey teammate.
Okay, back in Severian days,
yep,
right?
the good old X days. There's been a bunch of Severian connections on the podcast recently, too. So too funny.
Okay.
Too funny. Yeah. But, well, Bob, I want to introduce you. I know you best as CEO of Winter Wyman, but that's not what you're doing these days. So do you want to maybe give a quick introduction of?
Sure. Thank you. Since probably left Winter Wyman about 6 years ago, and since then did a little consulting right afterwards for a couple of companies there, and then decided not to do that anymore. I wanted to take a summer off. I didn't take a lot of time off in my work life. And my daughter Annie, who is married to Matt Delaney, her and I had talked over the years about maybe going to business together, at some point. And I didn't know would we buy a business? I didn't know what type of business, yada, yada, yada. So she came up with a bunch of ideas, and we ran the ground ball out, did some focus groups on, and one of them was actually, believe it or not, this is going towards the end of 2019, and in a special slant on the food delivery business, which is, as you know, is very, it's got a million players in there, all the big players.
Right.
They weren't in at that time. And after doing that, eventually it was around December, and she was ready to leave Boston Beer. She had kind of like my grow up. She went into Grant Thornton as a CPA, became a manager there, was tired of that type of career path. So I had a couple people went to Wyman help her out, and she got a job at Boston Beer, and she loved it. She went in as an internal auditor there, but worked very closely on even projects for Jim Cook, the founder. And so to speak, she was drinking the beer.
Yes,
she loved it there. And but after about 5 years, kind of the shine came off the ball a little bit, and she was thinking, well, maybe it's time for me and my dad to do something, I guess. And so with this idea of this food delivery thing, she was all ready to go. This is December of 2019, and eventually we had a meeting at her house, and she's ready to give her notice in at Boston Beer, and she's all excited. And I had said, she says, "What's up?" And I go, "Honey, I can't get behind this. Every fiber of my being is telling me this is not the right business opportunity for us. It's too many players, nobody makes any money. I just don't see this being what would be best for us in here." She was obviously disappointed. You can see the eyes get a little bit wet. And so I said, I'm sorry, honey, I know, but I didn't want you to all of a sudden pull up stakes at Boston Beer. I just don't think this is the right one. Now, who would have known 3 months later?
Right.
We're in a major worldwide pandemic.
Right.
We would have been out of business almost as soon as we started.
Instantaneously,
so... No, I didn't have that foresight, by the way, but just got lucky, I guess. But so from there, we eventually kissed and made up, I guess, and came up with a couple other thoughts. And one of them was she, being at home, they had already hired an au pair to take care of their kids. They had two daughters at the time. And so while at home, she was watching the au pair. She's a young woman from Brazil that just didn't know what to do with the kids. And and she had her oldest, Addie, went to Bright Horizons. So she got to see what a center was like, and all the technology they offer, and all the services and communications and all those things. So she thought about it. She says, why can't we do that and bring it into the house? Now, not everybody can afford to spend it. So the kids at Bright Horizons, it's a small chunk of change. More than a small chunk. And now she had two. So she just started playing around with the idea of creating some activities, communication tools. She bought this platform and she built this app. And it only could have like 20 people on it, but it kind of gave us a good opportunity to kind of get something out there. Pilot it, mostly with family and friends. And so, after doing that for about a year, I guess, almost the rest of the year, that we said, I think we got something here. And we kind of geared it mostly towards nannies and au pairs. We have since switched directions on that, but so off in December of 2020, we incorporated Raise Kids, RAYZ, KIDZ Kids, and we hired a young guy out of California to help us build an MVP, minimum valuable product, and let's get it out there, and did a great job getting us on the map. And as I said to Annie, I said, we don't know half the questions, and I've always kind of lived by my business life and probably my personal life too. You can overthink things too much. I come from an analytical background, being a finance guy, but I knew that only took you so far. Eventually, you gotta jump into the pond and learn how to swim.
Yeah.
And if you hit a wall, you take a right. If you hit another wall, you take a left. But I know if you don't do something, you never learn.
Yeah, you gotta just iterate.
So that was my fly. It still is today. And so we went into it, and we've pivoted, 95,000 times, I guess, at this point. And but we've done this and this and that. And we tried this out. We tried this different marketing approach. How do we hit the market? And eventually, we've come around probably almost a year and a half, 2 years into it. We're in year 5 now. That was more looking at when you look at childcare. Let me step back. There's really 3 areas of childcare. There's the centers, like I mentioned, with Bright Horizons. Then there's the in-home care, as far as au pairs or individual one-on-one nannies or family members. And then in the middle is called what's family childcare. And these are folks that have built the family childcare in their houses. So they take in 6, 8, 10, 12 kids, and they take care of the kids. And Raised Kids app was actually a perfect fit for that. Even though it wasn't designed for it, we had to do some modifications for it. But that's where we found, okay, this is where the bigger market is here, and there's millions of them out there.
Wow.
There's people out there. It's not like you can't believe it. And it's the lowest cost for people to have childcare for the kids, of course. And so, we modified the app and still modifying it to go in that direction. We were fortunate enough to win a big contract with the state of California. The unions out there to provide it for their participants. We're in year 1 of that. We hope that grows into something bigger at this point. But we've learned a ton. I mean, we've made so many mistakes. And Annie said, "Why do you laugh when we make mistakes?" Because it's how you learn. It's just how Dave Melville, my old mentor, Winter Wyman's founder, says, mistakes are life's greatest learning tool. So let's go.
Let's go.
So I'm proud to say today we seem to got something. We have a long ways to go, but that has certainly kept me busy. And plus, one of my other daughters, we have 3 daughters. A little backstory and all that. All 3 of them got married in a 12-month period. From June 13 to June 14, we had 3 weddings.
Wow.
And it was crazy. It's a very expensive year, by the way. I
can imagine.
But so they kept us busy, and then thankfully, we're blessed with grandkids. We have 8 grandkids now, and
awesome.
so that's Karen and I wake up every morning, who needs us today, type of a thing.
Yeah.
But Raised Kids, obviously, I'm very active with Annie on that. She's doing 99% of the work, by the way.
Awesome.
Thank God one of us is smart, and she's the one. So she, and then when my other daughters, Molly lives down in Duxbury, her and her husband, make a long story short, his dad had a fire alarm business, a commercial fire alarm installation business that my son-in-law Sean had worked for many years. Molly was working for them as well, and it was just a good opportunity for his dad to get out of it, and so I helped them navigate buying the business from
very cool
from his dad, and so I've been quite involved with that one too.
Yeah.
So I don't work full time for anybody, but I work full time.
Yes, but it sounds like you're having fun doing it.
It's a lot of fun. It's certainly wonderful to work with your kids.
Yeah.
Of course, it's truly blessed to do that. And to share. And I've always told them, it's just one man's opinion. I'm going to offer it, but you guys decide what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be one looking over your shoulders. I'll throw my 2 cents in. My ego won't be bruised if you don't use my whatever I may throw out there for an idea or suggestion. It's got to be what you want to do. But listen to the people. but you formulate your own ideas.
Yes.
And out of that. So it's been nice to watch them grow, watching Andy grow over the past 4+ years and hiring people, and unfortunately have to let go some people. And do you find the right? And I said, this is just how it works. And but you always be very kind to people on the way in, and you be equally kind on the way out.
Yes.
Let's make sure that they move on, and they move on in a good way for them.
With grace.
So with grace.
Yeah.
And
that's very wild.
That's
so you're busy. So you're a busy man these days.
Yeah. Some days are busier than others, but yeah. So.
I mean, I came to know you really through my owner, Bob Davis.
Bob, great guy. I love Bob.
And I know he feels the same way about you because growing up in the business, you'd hear, or how it is in the staffing industry. Everyone knows everyone, and unfortunately, there are some players out there that maybe don't operate with the same ethical standard as others. And I always remember your name would always come up being like no, Winter Wyman. That's a top-notch shop. Those are people that I'm willing to rub elbows with day in and day out, and we don't touch those people, so. Just so you were kind of for me was like this living legend kind of thinking like I gotta meet this guy.
I just wish some of it was true. But,
I gotta meet this guy. So I'm so appreciative for you coming on the podcast.
And thank you.
And I want to tell people about your story too. And I think you were at the helm for Winter Wyman during some serious growth years, and
about 17 years.
I want to hear about some of the leadership lessons learned. But before we dive into that, quick rapid fire, just so the audience can get to know a little flavor of who Bob is. It is beers and careers, but what is your favorite cocktail or beer?
We're drinking it right now.
Heineken. Heineken. This is the one.
I was telling Mark when he sent out that note to me, tell me what you like to drink. And I said, well, let me tell you a little story. When we had a place up in Maine for 25 years, we recently sold it. And our kids grew up there. They bring their friends up, and from high school to college as well. And so we had the boats, and so we'd take the kids water skiing, tubing, and all the other stuff. And a bunch of our friends had said to one of all my daughters, I can't remember, hey, we want to be able to thank your dad for taking us out. And, we know he likes beer. What kind of beer does he like? And they all looked at each other, cold.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He'll drink anything.
Cold.
But Heineken is my choice.
That's your favorite. Are you into quotes? Do you have a favorite quote? Some people are really into them, and others aren't.
Yeah, I guess there's probably a lot, but I can't think of one that stands out in my head. I love reading quotes. I love it. But it kind of catches me in the moment.
In the moment,
in the moment type of thing.
I totally get it. What was your first job?
First job ever? Like
ever,
a W-2 job?
No. I mean, like
professional job?
No, not even like first job.
Well, other than shoveling driveways, mowing lawns, raking leaves, something like that. My first W-2 job, I think I was 15 years old. I think I had to lie about my age there was a dishwasher at Sheraton Hotel in Lexington. It's not there now. And my dad was a bartender there part-time, and he got me in there. So I did that for a summer or whatever when I was 15 years old. And then I realized I didn't want to be a dishwasher.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. It really is.
It is.
So one of those lessons, go to school, finish school type of things. But, hey, met some great people there. You just kept moving on from there. And just jumped around as any kid does.
Yeah.
You do a job here for a summer, you do that. But mostly I worked at the rink in Lexington, growing up, in my high school and college days, driving the Zamboni. And,
no way, all right.
Yeah, so that was...
Rink rat.
I was a total rink rat, so I couldn't get enough of it. So when the job opened up there, I was an ice monitor for, public skating for a number of years. And somebody told me that somebody was leaving. I said, love to do it. So... I got my brothers in there after me and everything else too. But I did that right up until my senior year in college.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. It was a great job. I loved that. Love being in a rink.
Yeah, right. There's something special about it.
It really is.
Something special
about just, it. You miss. I haven't. I retired for the good of the game probably like 15 years ago. So, but now some of my grandkids are starting to get into it. So
yes.
I'm getting reintroduced back to the
rink. I'm going through my renaissance of coaching my sons now, kids, and I will admit, a week ago we had to play in another tournament, and I was like, man, it's April. I'm pretty done with hockey. And then we had so much fun this weekend, and I'm driving to work Monday, and I go, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm kind of going to miss it for a few months.
Well, there's no halfway with hockey.
There's no halfway.
So you're either in it
There's
or you're not.
there's no halfway, and
it's not a sport; it's a religion.
it's a religion. And the volume of quality time I get with my kids is out of control. It's just you couldn't.
Well, even my parents, probably you guys remember. I remember my parents growing up. I'm the oldest of 6. 4 boys. Although my sister Sue was one of the first ones, probably females to play hockey. She only played a couple of years, so this is going back way long ago. And I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they took us to all the rinks. People would take turns carpooling and all that. But they made such wonderful friends. Go to the tournaments, you go away, and even up until my mom passed a few years ago. But the women, they still got together twice a year. The
That's
hockey
awesome.
moms for lunch. I think they've all probably have passed away at this point. But right up until their the 90s.
They're tight relationships.
Yeah, they just stayed together. So there's a bond. Being biased in hockey, I just think there's a bond as a hockey player. I played other sports too, but there's something about hockey that was just different.
I will admit I ruminate it on it often because I'm like, why is it so different? Because I'm the same way. I played college lacrosse and. I wish I was better at hockey, but I was just better at lacrosse. And but I keep coming back to. I think it's the hockey locker room. I think the locker room is just a place where you can't hide who you are. You got to be who you are because people will call bullshit if they're
not holding up your end.
Yeah, if you're not holding up your end, or if you're just trying to be someone who you aren't. You can smell it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just who you are, and everyone accepts you.
Yeah. I can remember being up in Montreal. I used to play in a tournament when I was older, 30s and 40s. First weekend in November, they had a tournament up there. Played for a group of guys called the Mooks. And it was a great group of guys. A lot of guys, city guys from Lynn and all that. And so we're up in Montreal having a beer between games, and we were talking about the same thing. I said, what is it about that hockey bond? And Jimmy Beaton, great guy. We very much look alike, and he's a little stockier than I am. But he had played in the International League, semi-pro, known to be a fighter. He was really good at it. And but he says, because you fight.
Yeah.
We all looked at each other and we go, because I would do anything for you. I would jump in.
You're right.
There's something about. I know people maybe not be a big fan of the fighting in hockey, but there's something about that. You know what? It's like you're in a foxhole together. And it creates that like I guess in soldiers. I was never fortunate enough to be in the military, but that bond that they have.
Exactly. It's just the stakes are different.
Yeah.
The stakes are. I know someone in the office yesterday showed me some play at the end of a soccer game as the buzzer went off and someone kind of cheap shot at someone. And I just looked at him and I go, I'm so happy my sons play hockey because that would not be allowed.
That would not.
He's like, what do you mean by that? I was like, that guy would pay for that.
He would definitely.
He would pay for that. And I'm like, even at 10, they're going to figure out how to make that guy pay for that. And it's like, it's a good life lesson of team.
It is.
And it is.
You don't see any showboating.
No, you don't. You don't. But it is, to your point, it's a hard thing to articulate unless you've experienced it.
Unless you've been there.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
So
no,
we could wax poetic on hockey probably all day.
Almost
Good
forever.
God. We should start the hockey podcast.
And I even shared my son-in-law Matt as he's looking at looking at the team, the team at work and stuff. And I used to share this at Winter Wyman all the time. Everybody obviously knew I was a hockey player. I probably talked about it way too much. But so many of my stories, and I think being a leader a lot has to do with how your ability to tell a story.
Yes.
That's germane to what you're trying to get across. And, you talk about, okay, who do you want to surround yourself with in business too? And I said, well, I always looked at it as my 11 o'clock hockey team. And what I mean by that is if you played after high school, you play these leagues and you play anytime between 7 and 11 o'clock at night. Well, on a cold December, January night, some guys are sitting there going at 10 o'clock sitting at the house, do I really want to go to this game tonight?
Right.
Grab my crap and
ready for bed.
I'm ready to go to bed, and nah. And, but the guys that showed up, and there's been a lot of times I've gone to those games and it would just be me and maybe 5 or 6 other guys, and we have no subs and anything. But somehow we found a way to play to win. We won more games than we probably lost. And the other team had like 2 lines, 3 lines, and you played smarter than that. So that's what I'm saying. You want the people that are going to show up,
right?
And they just don't show up. we're showing up to win the game.
Right.
We're not here just to take a waltz and get our asses kicked. You
Right.
know, I said, we're going to go out there. You just play back. You don't exhaust yourself. You manage it. And so it was one of my favorite games is when you showed up with maybe 1 or 2 seconds or none.
It's special. It's special.
You get a penalty on purpose just so you can get
take a break.
Go hack somebody and say, I'm just getting right to the box.
I'm tired. Oh, it's too good. So how, like, one last one. Do you, I'm sure you've got a ton of favorite books, but what favorite books come to mind?
Favorite books on the business side, I guess 2 would stand out for me. Is Good to Great.
Yeah.
Is definitely one of them. It's just a great story about companies, whether you're good, great, or indifferent. It just looks at all the different components to get into that. How do you get there? And I can remember the story about Dave Melville was a big reader, and I'm a fairly good reader, but not like he was. And and he'd been after me to read this book. It seemed like forever. And I kept, I'll get it. Working 60 hours a week.
Exactly. I'll squeeze that in.
You know?
I'll squeeze that in.
Yeah, so I'm at Keystone offices in Boston, and I was just ready to leave to go to the airport because I had to go to a conference in Dallas, and I actually was giving a speech at it. I haven't written the speech yet. So it was one of those, I'm leaving the office by like 6:30 at night, and the cab's waiting for me downstairs, and phone rings. It's one of those ones, do you pick it up or you don't pick it up, you know? And I said, shoot, I picked it up. It was Dave. He goes, how you doing? I said, good. Gee, I'm on my way to the airport. He says, have you got the book yet? I go, what book? He goes, Good to Great. And I go, no, Dave. He says, get it. And just read it on the plane or something like that. So I get downstairs, I have my suitcase. Okay, wait a minute, because there's a bookstore right there at One Boston Place, right around the corner. So I walk in, when it's right in the front. Thank God. So I didn't know the hell I paid for it. Yeah. But I just got it. So it's one of those, I just opened the page, I started reading. I said, no, I got to work on my presentation. But I said, let me just start reading it. And then I just kept reading. And I spent, 4-hour flight. I was probably halfway through the book, if not more, and I'm going, man, and I got to the hotel room and I stayed up there and I finished it. Yeah. Got up early in the morning, kind of put a presentation together. So, and figured it out, but just got sucked right into it. And the other one would be Speed of Trust by Stephen M. R. Covey. Yeah. His dad wrote 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And I love it. Trust is so important in so many things, obviously relationships, whether it be business or sports or with your wife or marriage or just friendships, and about how do you earn that trust? What are the components that give you that trust? And he does a great job, and he makes it analogous to a tree, actually, that you start off at the root system, which is the base. That's where the character, integrity are. If you don't have that, you can't go anywhere. Right? You're an honest person. Right. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Can people say trust you? Can they say, if Bob says it will happen? And then as you move up towards the ground level, he labels it, that's where your intent. What is a person's intent? Do they have good intentions? Are they somebody who wants to do good? Are they looking out for other people? Are they people that just you want to be around? But they're obviously very transparent with their intent. Very clear. They're very. They want to make sure people know what they stand for. And then as you move up the tree, then you get into what they call capabilities or competencies. Do you have talents? Can you actually do something? Can you actually perform at a job? Can you perform at a task like that? And so those are the first 3. And then the last one, the top, you get to the top of the tree, is results. Do you get results? Now, in order to get undying trust, you have to have all 4. Yeah. You got to be a good person. You got to have good intentions. You got to have skills, capabilities, and some of those means you just work hard. And you have to be the smartest person, but you just work hard. But yet you get the results. Yes. And when you get that, when you obtain that, then people go, I can trust this person. Yes. I can trust this organization. I can trust this. And they give great stories about, pre 9/11. And pre 9/11, it's travel a bit when I was my younger age in business, and you could just show up at the airport 15 minutes before, just jump boom, right on, and you get on the plane. As long as they haven't closed the gate, the door on the plane, you get on. Well, then 9/11 happened, and guess what happened? It takes you 2.5 hours to go because what? Trust got broken down.
Yeah, low
you
trust.
Can't trust, and so. Obviously, it's slow, so the speed slows down. So when you have trust, things speed up.
Yes.
Things get done quicker. You know,
Yes.
you don't have to explain yourself 90 times. I get it. Okay,
Right.
good. I trust Bob. We're going to do it. And he gave a great story about Warren Buffett, and I can't remember the name of the company, but it was a multi-billion-dollar deal. And he and whoever the CEO of the company was, they met for like an hour, and they just knew each other. They trusted each other.
Yeah.
And they just walked
I
out.
remember that
They walked
story,
out of
yeah.
the office. They told the attorneys to put the deal together. Well, we're going to do deal. No, it's all set.
Yeah.
If he told me it's good, we're good.
It's good.
They put the deal together in less than a month.
Right.
You know, and it was done. A multi-billion-dollar
It's insane.
because they trusted each other.
Right.
You know, so again, that's where relationships, and you got to trust each other. You got to earn that trust and keep that trust. So
Yes.
So those are the two books that stand. I've read a ton of books, by the way, but
Those
are
two
the
come
that
to mind.
stand out. Those
And
are
I remember in Speed of Trust, one of the lessons that I remember taking out of it too was giving trust.
Giving trust,
Not
yeah.
just waiting for everyone to earn
Yep,
it, but
yep.
like just give it away.
Yep.
And let's see what people do with it.
That's
And
a
then you
great
can
point.
always take it back. And I remember reading the book because, you know, you've got people that come to your, like in our experience, a company with different backgrounds, and they might not be
Yeah.
so readily available to give trust. And I always
Yeah.
would go, read The Speed of Trust.
Yep, yep.
Because it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to take a little leap.
Some people are very guarded. They don't.
Yeah.
They're afraid somebody's going to take something away from them. They're going to get hurt. Almost to a fault, I guess.
Yeah.
That I kind of, you're almost like you already have my trust. It's something you have to lose.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know? There are some
exactly.
people you know right away.
Right,
Okay, I'm staying
right,
away.
right.
But most people, I think, are good people. And say, okay, this is something I'm going to give to you that you have to lose from me. And have I been burned? Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I have gained so much more by being that way, by being open, being very transparent. And people say, geez, you may be too transparent. I go, about what?
Yeah.
I have nothing to hide.
Exactly.
You know, I said, you know, about myself personally or professionally. I'm very honest about my mistakes.
Yes.
I've got a ton of those to share with people. And so, but, you know, just by opening up that type of dialogue, that type of transparency, it draws people in. You
It
know,
does.
It becomes magnetic, you know, so.
It does. And even if you were the most discerning person in the world and not giving trust away, you still would get burned.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there is no.
If somebody's going to screw you, you're going to find a way to screw you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't
Exactly.
care.
Yeah. So I completely agree. So what happens? You get out of UMass.
Yeah, UMass Lowell, and
But, how do you
and I
get-
didn't know what I majored in accounting.
Okay.
And,
So you knew you
this-
wanted finance.
Well, it's a funny story there. Even I said, well, I think I knew it. You know, I went in to play hockey. Really,
Yeah.
I played my freshman year. Wasn't for me, and so I decided to put a little bit more into my education, and I played a lot of hockey around it. I played a lot of hockey in college. Just wasn't for my college team.
Yeah.
And but so I said, well, let me start putting so. And the only reason I took accounting, people's not funny, because it came easy to me. And
Yeah.
math was always one of my stronger subjects in school. So
Yeah, you're
it just
good at
made
it.
sense to me. It just I could read it once and I could just get it. And I remember buddies of mine would be studying and say, "Don't you get this?" And they go,
Yeah.
"You get this?" Yeah. No, I did have to study too, but so I just said, "Well, if I'm going to take courses, I wasn't good at social studies or English or other stuff. Let me go into business and accounting. I majored in accounting, and but when I graduated, I didn't know if I wanted to be an accountant or not. So I was kind of happy, just driving the Zamboni, making $3.50 an hour or something like that. And like I said, I was the oldest of six. And I remember my dad grabbing me probably around July. I had graduated a couple months back, and he goes, "Okay," he says, "What the hell is this?" He says, "You can't work at the rink." I said, "Why not?" He says, "Go get a real job," type of thing. So, so I wrote a resume. Next day or so, called a few friends. A very good friend of mine, actually, unfortunately, has recently just passed away a month or so ago. Paul Looney. He was the senior vice president at Millipore Corporation. And I knew Paul. His kids played hockey. I coached him a little bit, but he's just a great guy, very gregarious guy. And so I reached out, hey Paul, and he said, "Hey, send me your resume." And I'm sure because of him, they created a job for me in the accounting department as a staff accountant. And that was my first start, making $12,700 a year.
All right, there you go.
$12,700 a year was my first annual salary, and I thought I made it.
Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Nowadays,
Yeah.
it doesn't buy a cup of coffee.
No,
every day,
unfortunately not. Although the dollar was worth a little more then.
Yeah, that's true too. So, so from there, think I can go on and on, but things just grew from there for me from that point. But I'll always be so appreciative of Paul, putting his neck out, if you will, for
Yes.
me. And then I never want to take it for granted.
Yeah.
I always, every time I saw him, I say thank you. The last time I saw him was probably 6 years ago. He lived down West Palm Beach now, and I just found out he has passed away last month. And we reached out to one of his sons just to let him know how sorry I was.
Yeah,
So,
thinking
but
about it.
just a wonderful mentor, taught me a lot.
Yes.
He's rough and tumble guy. He slapped me in the back of the head a few times.
Yeah, yeah.
Get your ass together here.
Yeah.
I'll get working.
Well,
you know?
I mean, we all need that along the
No,
way. And-
he's like my dad.
yeah, which is phenomenal. So safe to say, when you graduated from UMass and even at Millipore,
Yeah.
you weren't thinking about leading a staffing organization as your future goals.
No, it's so funny when you think about that. Talk about something I would never envisioned. I worked at Millipore for a number of years. Was fortunate to grow up into managers in the accounting finance group there. I kind of stuck my neck out to get the job a couple of times, and I said, hey, if I can't do it, then fire me, type of thing.
Yeah.
And they took a chance on me. Matter of fact, Paul even said to me, you got big ones. And I go, well, I figure if I don't take this chance, somebody else is going to do it. So I'm going to put my chits on the table. I'm probably not qualified for it yet, but I'll work my ass off.
Yeah.
I'll get the job done. I'll promise you that. If it takes hard work, I'll get it done. And so they took a chance on me. And I was very grateful for that. I went with a spinoff of Millipore. It was it's called the Apparatus Division. They manufacture Millipore Corporation is they call it separation technology,
Yes.
but they build filtration systems for. They had divisions in water, chemical, science, and medical, and a gazillion different products. I actually worked in the new products group, helping them coordinate all their costs and trying to get a track of their R&D spending. So an opportunity came up with a startup. They offered it to a guy that I didn't know at that point, Cy Badesian, but he was manager of the apparatus division, and they offered him a finance back to take it and separate it. But they needed some finance guy, so knocked on his door and said, hey, Cy, I'm Bob Boudreau, and he already told I may be coming his way, and I said, I don't know what's going on here, but I'd like to throw my ring in the hat for because I've been working for it's a big Millipore was a big
huge
it was a
company.
$500 million company back
Right.
then, which would be
Right.
multi-billion now. I appreciate it, but you really don't see how a business totally works. You're kind of stuck in your own pigeonhole. Although I try to always go out and learn from the other groups. And I used to remember my first boss, Bob Berry, and I said, I think I got my job done. Is it okay if I go over to order entry to go work with Wally Alterizio for a day? He goes, why do you want to do that? I said, well, I get these reports to see all these orders coming in. They turn into reports here. I just like to see where they come from. So I said, hey, go ahead. So I went over to talk to Wally, and I said, do you mind if I follow you around for a day? He says, no, if you want to do that, kid, go ahead. So I sat in the meetings, got to know some of the people. I went down to the warehouse. Joe Sanasuaso is the manager of the warehouse. Hey, you hockey puck, what are you doing down here? And he says, you bean counter, get back upstairs. And I said, Joe, I kind of cleared my schedule for Friday. Can I come down and work in the warehouse? He goes, what? And I said, just like to see how this works,
Yeah.
So I did that with all the different groups. I just try to look to see where I can learn about the business more. I like the finance side of it, but I want to see how it all fit together. And so I was always interested in what the other groups were doing, whether it be marketing, whether it be manufacturing, and all that. So I think what I was able to acquire was just a different viewpoint of a business all around, how things work, how things have to play together. So when the opportunity came with it, and we call them Olympic Systems, Cy named it, to take their manufacturing part of that business away, maybe highly specialized machine shops. And so eventually it led to, long story short, he decided to do it, signed the dotted line, hired me as his director of accounting and finance.
Oh, wow.
And basically we're sitting on picnic tables in the office. We didn't have any furniture yet. I was doing all the payroll in a one-write system. You probably don't even know what that is, but it probably don't exist any longer. Doing the payroll by hand, doing all the journal entries by hand, and then eventually got a software system eventually, and did that for a number of years for them. And went off to a computer company as a director of finance at Charles River Data Systems. They're no longer around, and spent a couple of years with them. That was a tough go. It was just a tough environment to work in, but you get your muscle. It made me sharpen my pencil, though. I was grateful I had to get my act together a little bit more on that. I would probably let some things erode. But the guy with the president of the company, he was just very detailed and all that, so I just knew I had to get a better game. And so he wasn't always nice about it, but so I did that, and then actually I went back to Olympic, back as a general manager. Si and I were talking. You like it there? I go, no, I don't like it here. And he says, why don't you come back? So I did that for a while, but then I said, I just had an itch to do something more. It was a small family business, and then I get a call from, I should say I came home. My wife Karen, we had 3 kids at that point, 3 girls, and she goes, Bob Payne called you. Bob Payne worked at Winter Wyman. I had worked with Bob before. I had hired people through Bob and Winter Wyman, and I was getting home just in time. I worked pretty late, and in time to maybe give the kids a kiss ahead on the head and go to bed and grab something to eat. And he says, "You want you to call him tonight?" I said, "All right." Yeah. So I figured I didn't know what he wanted. So I put the kids to bed, had something to eat, and Karen reminded me, she says, "He wants you guys." I said, "I can't. It's 10 o'clock." He said he didn't care what time to get in. I told him it'd be late. I said, "All right." Pick up the phone, call Bob. I go, "Hey, Bob, sorry to call you." He's like, No, I told Karen. He actually knew my wife. And so he says, "I got an opportunity for you." Now, my hearing skills weren't too acute at this point. I'm looking at the pillow in my bed, going, wishing my head was sitting right there, because in the bedroom and taking the call. And he goes, "Tell me this opportunity." Then, like 5 minutes in, he goes, Whoa, time out. What's the company again? He goes, "Winter Wyman, to come work at Winter Wyman." I go, pause. He says, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just thinking." And he goes, and I said, "Bob, I appreciate the call." I said, "But I don't think I'm interested in it. It was for the controller's job." And he says, "Well, you can tell me why." And I said, "Well, I don't want to work a zillion hours a week, but I like manufacturing. I like the complexities of it. I feel it's a good learning curve. I'm going to keep growing by keep learning here and see where it leads me. I just don't see myself going into a professional services or a headhunting firm. I just don't see it's a good career move for me." And he says, "All right." He said, "I had knowing you," because I had a lot of conversation over the years, and he goes, "Do me a favor." I go, "Sure." He says, "Come meet Dave Melville." And I go, "Bob, if you think I should meet Dave Melville, sure, happy to." So now, unbeknownst to me, Dave had all these accounting placement resources to him. I think there was 25 people lined up to meet Dave was the interview, and Dave was doing all the interviewing. Now, I didn't know Dave. I knew of him, but I didn't know him. So I started calling around folks and say people I thought may know him, people that had worked there before, and I got all these wonderful things. Honest to a fault, just guy, impeccable integrity, a visionary, and all that. I'm going, geez, I'm still not interested in a job. It'd be great to meet the guy.
Sounds like a good
guy. So I remember going into the interview and walked in, and with Mark, I think within, could have been 10, but I think it was 5 minutes, I said, it just clicked.
Really?
Just listening to him talk, and I'm going, where have you been my whole life?
Yeah.
I worked with some really good people. I worked with some, all good people, but some really tough people too. And this guy was just about, Bob, if I make money, other people make money. I'm not here to, take all the kingdom jewels with me. I want to make sure everybody's happy. This is my philosophy on this. And he had some really good questions. He's obviously a great interviewer, going back and forth. And so now I'm getting interested. I'm going, geez, So I remember the last thing he says, okay, what question should I ask you at the end that I haven't asked you yet? And I said, well, Dave, I'm not sure if it's a question or not, but I said, surprises are for birthdays. And he goes, what do you mean by that? He says, well, I said, I'm not going to guarantee you, but I'm going to work my hardest so you'll never have any surprises because of something I was doing.
Yeah.
I've been well informed.
Yeah.
There's no thing that I didn't tell you or didn't like that. I said, the one thing I am transparent, I'm honest, even the bad news, I'm going to tell you the bad news. So at the end of the day, if you have a birthday on my account, then it's my fault. It's not yours, And you always remember that, surprises are not for birthdays. And so I don't know if that got me the job or not, but I remember I walked out and Bob was at 950 Winter Street, the old building there, and kind of walking out, giving me the brief. And he goes, "Well, what'd you think?" And I said, "Well, Bob, two things." I said, "Well, one, thank you. Thank you for talking me into meeting Dave Melville. It was so wonderful to meet a legend of the industry and just a guy. Everything I heard about him was so much affirmed and even more." He said, "What's the second thing?" I said, I don't care if you guys make fire hydrants. I want to work for that guy. He kind of smiled. He goes, "I thought you would." So whatever the time frame went by there, out of the 25, there was 2 of us that were standing at that point. And and I asked Bob, I said, "Okay, I got to know my number 1 and number 2. He goes, "Why do you want to know that?" I said, "Is it for me to lose, or do I have to fight, do I have to put a better game on here? I'm going to put my best game anyways." He says, I think you're number 1 right now. He said, "But it's close." I said, "Okay." So then Dave had me meet, I think, with everybody in the company, it seemed like. I had to miss softball games. I had to go to dinners and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, you do what you do. So, and then my last interview with him, which was about, is to meet at his house. And I was playing in a hockey tournament at the same time. Thankfully, he was playing it. He's a big golfer. He was playing a golf tournament the same weekend, so we just couldn't meet. And I was going, "Oh, did I have to miss a game?" So, so finally, he said, "Well, how about Sunday evening?" I go, "Great, last game. If we make it to the end, this Sunday afternoon." And we did make it to the end. We didn't win, but pretty banged up. We played 4 games in like 3 days, and
probably had a few beers.
So I said, last day I want to walk in was like, cut over the eye or something. So I get to the house, and Dave, I don't know where Dave was. His wife Joan is absolutely lovely, and then he has 5 kids. I think 4 of them were there. So I said, "I'm being interviewed by the family." To myself, I'm being interviewed by the family. So I think he purposely stayed. So I just sat down and just chit-chatted with Joan and the kids there for, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 minutes, something like that. And Dave came down and he goes, "Hey, you get to know you?" I said, "Yeah, just so nice meeting all of you." I said, "Let's go back to my study." So we went in there, and he said, "Bob, I'm gonna offer you the job." He says, and I said, "Dave, I very much appreciate that." He gave me the number. Now, my wife hated when I changed jobs. And the reason is because every time I changed job, I took lower pay. Every time I shifted, she goes, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Well, I'm looking at the opportunity. I'm looking out at the it wasn't a big difference, but it wasn't. And so even going to Winter Wyman, I took a drop in pay for where I was with Olympic Systems. And I said, "Dave, I certainly got to talk to the boss at home, but I'm sure I'll be calling you tomorrow morning." Accepted. He says, "Okay." And so I did, and came in, and 27 years later.
Wow.
I left back in 2019.
2019, right? Yeah.
So
what a ride.
So it was a ride. It was quite a ride. A lot
ride.
of ups and downs, as you've experienced in your world in staffing. We certainly had our ebbs and flows, and shared a couple before we even got on the podcast here. So, but yeah, it was a great experience. I loved my job. I loved the people I work with. It was family to me, and Dave was family. We were like father and son. We would tell each other we loved each other, because we did. And we didn't have to hold back. We didn't have to measure our words. We always felt, whether it was his idea or my idea, we didn't care as long as it was the best thing for Winter Wyman. So, where do you find that?
It's the truth. There's a sales guy we work with, Casey Jaycox, phenomenal guy. K-Force guy.
Okay, yeah, I think I know the name.
He always goes, "Do you want to be right?" Or he goes, "I always tell people, do you want to be right, or do you want to get what you want?" It's like, I want to get what I want. I don't care about being right.
Right, exactly.
It's the truth. Do you feel like when I listen to you share that story, especially the Millipore days, there seems to be like such a genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
Like you were just like, I want
sponge.
Yeah.
I want to learn.
Were you always like that? Or did you just genuinely find it interesting?
Probably, it's funny you say that. In school, I was probably
Yeah.
In school, I like through junior high, middle school. Now, I think I was like almost a straight A student. Then I got to high school and found a social life.
Yes.
And so guess what? School kind of went down. I mean, I probably got out of there with a B average, I guess, out of high school.
Yeah.
Similar to Lowell as well, but. At school, just didn't. I liked school, but it just wasn't.
But even outside of school, were you like
I,
in your
but I
hobbies?
like doing
were
things.
always-
Like wherever I worked a job, I tried to
Yeah.
learn as much about that
Right.
job as I could. School, yeah, it was a place to learn, kind of the basics, the fundamentals. If I had to say one thing about school, particularly at Lowell, it taught me how to solve problems. What I learned through the finance classes and accounting class, how do you break a problem down? I still do it today. I did it at Winter Wyman. I said, let's do the math. And I'm not saying let's actually add up. Does this add up?
Yes.
Is what we're talking about, does it add up at the end? Let's do the math on this. But this kind of brings some logic to an idea. Okay, let's see if we did this, does it make sense to go to here? Does it make sense to here? So it's just my terminology to say, let's do the math.
Let's break it down.
Let's break it down. And so I learned most of that, I would say, at Lowell, just from my professors there, it's just how to break a problem down, and how to isolate things that need to work on. And then you just do it by experiences, you watch other people. I watch other leaders. I watch how they operate. I was always a student of other
Yes.
people. I just love people,
Yes,
So
yes.
I could sit at the Burlington Mall all day,
Right.
and just say,
People watch.
what's going on with that person? What's going on with that person? And I'd be happy all day, just
Yes.
sitting there, grab a cup of coffee, and say, what's going on with them? But you learn good things, you learn bad things from leaders, you learn things that I would never do that if I was in that position. If I ever was, I want to do exactly what that person did.
But did you feel like when do you feel like in your career you were gaining like the greatest leadership lessons? Was it pre-Winter Wyman or while you were there?
I'm probably going to say Winter Wyman.
Yeah.
I mean, I not that I didn't learn
No,
things on the
yeah,
way up
yeah.
there. Dave was such a great mentor. He was so giving about his thoughts. In fact, he could see things that I just couldn't see,
Yeah.
and I just always respected him for that. We didn't always agree. People say,
Yes.
"No, Dave and I, we don't always agree."
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we have a laugh about it, and what's
we'll
about it?
keep
So
moving.
it's not personal.
Keep
It's
moving,
just
yeah.
keep moving. So, yeah, I would say definitely Dave. I learned. My father probably. My father says, learn some from everybody. You
Yeah.
learn from an asshole how not to be one.
Yes.
Yeah. And but I used to watch management teams when I was certainly well below that level at Millipore and other companies that I was fortunate to be part of. And I was looking when new ideas are being presented. I kind of noticed a common theme that most people were asking questions to get to know, to say no. And I'm going, why are they just trying to cut it apart?
Right.
They're trying to knock it down. That was always, you want to do due diligence, you want to vet things, but it always felt to me it was too over the top there. Because if you say no, there's no risk. You don't do anything.
Right.
Nobody's putting what's on the line.
Right.
You say no, okay, we're not doing it, okay? But I always say, if I ever get in that position, I'm going to look for a way to say yes. I'm not going to just say yes, right? But my question is going to be leading towards, let me understand better.
Yes.
Let me understand where you're coming from. I may not see what you're seeing, so tell me how you got here. And that was kind of a story even in teaching leadership at Winter Wyman. I said, I actually don't care about the answer at the end. I care about the process you went through to get there.
Yes.
Because you're human beings. We're going to be wrong sometimes. Right. But I want to see what's the process. What's the steps that you took to get to that point? And that's okay if you're wrong, because then you learn from it. You go back and you retrace your steps and you figure out where you take take the left when you should have taken the left.
Right.
That's okay to be wrong. It's matter of fact, I'm expecting you to be wrong.
Right.
A lot, Right. And that's how we're going to learn. And that's how you give people a safe place to land. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay. Let's have fun with this.
Yes.
Let's move forward. And let's take this. Now we know what not to do. That's invaluable.
Yes.
That's invaluable to you. So those things that Dave taught me. Dave, again, as I said before, your mistakes are life's greatest learning tool. So let's go.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
When you were under Dave's tutelage early on, like how much time did you have between you becoming CEO, but necessarily you knowing you were going to become CEO? Like before, was there much time between before it was publicly announced?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, so I won't give you the long. But when Dave approached me about taking this, because he knew I was itching to do something more.
Yeah.
But I told him, Dave, I'm not going anywhere. I
Right.
love my job as CFO.
Yes.
So I don't want to take this threat. But if you ever think about new business, you ever think about new opportunity, I've worked intimately with all of them. I put all the policies in, put all the systems in. I spent a lot of time with, like I did at Millipore, I spent a lot of time with salespeople trying to figure out what makes them tick. with the managers or managing partners there. We spend a lot of time together. I just want to find out more what they know, and because I thought it'd help me do my job better. Because my job in the finance was to provide them information. Well, am I giving them the right information?
Right.
Am I giving just the textbook stuff? But what do they really need? And by learning that, then it made me understand the business better.
Yes.
So now you dig in a little bit deeper or looking at things differently. So so when Dave approached me about Keystone, I go, it's been around for a while, small, probably $4 million business, and he goes, you don't seem to be too excited. I go, well, I was kind of hoping to be something new. I could put my fingerprints all over it, Dave, but no, thank you. I'm sorry if I'm showing disappointment, but I don't. My apologies. No, I'd love to take the opportunity to do it. So I knew a little bit about the L placement because I spent most of my time in the Winter Wyman side, being on the recruiting, headhunting side there. So I had a lot to learn going over there. There were, managing partners there, most of them probably older than me at that point, and I was going over to take over. But again, it takes time. You just go in. So Dave, I think Dave gave me that. I don't know if he knew it at the time. Was giving me that was kind of my training ground.
Yes.
I don't think he was ever thinking of me for Winter Wyman.
Okay.
That's my assumption. He's never met, and he would say
he
that.
wouldn't
He would have said that.
hold it
He wouldn't
back.
hold it back.
Right.
So here I am. It's a funny story actually, because here we just kind of got out of the mess as I was telling you about. What Winter Wyman was kind of in deep doo-doo earlier before we got online. But we were in financial trouble back in 2001 when the dot-com hit and 9/11 hit. Got our way out of that. I was made CEO, appointed at the end of 2002. So it was a year or so after all this. And but I was running Keystone, and we were having a big session with a lot of our affiliates around the country at Winter Wyman because they had a big conference room. So, and I want to say I was the keynote speaker, but I was mostly a speaker. Well, the night before, I'm with Dave. We had just played golf or something. He said, let's grab dinner. Because Dave came back in to run Winter Wyman himself.
Okay.
He had stepped away for a while. He didn't like the way things were going, so he came back in. And one thing about Dave, and he'd say that, unfortunately, he passed away a number of years ago, but he says, what I'm not good at is managing people. I'm not managing salespeople. He didn't have the patience for it. That's why he always hired somebody else to do that, but he knew how to run what he wanted. So we had dinner, and he's going, Bob, I'm just saying. So I said, hey, Dave, here's some of the things I think you got to start thinking about. Compensation things need to be structured differently here because this is just not working out this way, and you need to be focused on this and this and this and so we left him, and he says, well, I need somebody to work in this compensation thing. And he said, I know you got a million things going on. You're working, I don't know how many hours a week. He says, can you think of it overnight and give me a call, see if you take on that project? I go, okay, let me sleep on it, Dave. I want to make sure, I don't want to say yes because I don't want to let you down, And so I'm in early in that morning, getting ready for all the people for Keystone to show up. And so I get a call from our controller at Keystone, Alan Cochran. He goes, hey, boss. He goes, I got some bad news. I go, what? And he goes, we double booked like $500,000 of business last quarter. I go, how the hell did we? I said, all right, Alan. Okay, all right. We got to go back and restate and da-da-da-da-da. And it wasn't half. It's probably like $250,000 or something like that. So Elaine Varellis, who's in charge of our sales group, I'm ready to walk into it. She says, can I speak to you for a minute? And I go, oh, God, what? So she says, just to let you know, we just lost our second biggest client last night. I go, Jesus Christ. So I'm walking into the meeting, and I say, all right, I'll be right in. So then I'm walking through the other room where Dave's office was in Winter Wyman. I had to make some copies of something, and he flags me down. Now, I literally just left him, I don't know, 9 hours ago or something. From dinner, probably 10 hours ago from dinner. He says, you got a minute? And I go, Dave, I can barely get a minute. Well, and I said, he says, you didn't call me about this. I said, Dave, I'm sorry. I just had this thing that I'm actually, I got to get back in. He says, do you get any time today at all? And I go, how about lunch? How about we just grab lunch again? I can break for lunch, but I'm on stage.
Yeah, you're on the clock.
So just okay, we'll see you at lunch. So I break, and so I'm sitting there as I'm up on stage, and my mind's wandering as I've taken a pause. And I said, okay, bad things usually come in threes, So I'm thinking, well, one Alan's news, Elaine's news. I'm going, oh shit,
Yeah.
what the hell? I got a job.
Yeah,
So-
canned at lunch.
so I get in his small conference room, and he goes, and this is where it's kind of funny, is, Bob, I was taking this shower this morning, and I was thinking of you, and I go,
That's
oh, geez, this is not going good right now. And I go, can you just clarify that for a minute? So he goes, no. He said, would you ever consider becoming CEO of all Winter Wyman? All the companies, there's 4 Winter Wyman companies in Keystone, so it'd be 5 companies. And I went, okay, you just caught me off guard.
Yeah.
I said, Dave, my morning hasn't gone that well, so I wasn't expecting this.
Yes.
I want to say thank you, but I want to say yes yet, because I think you and I got to talk. I shared a lot of stuff with you last night. I'm not sure how much of it you thought was relevant or not, but it's my feelings. I want to make sure we're on the same page about this thing. Because I had moved quite a bit away from Winter Wyman to run Keystone, so I was involved, but I wasn't.
You weren't in it,
I wasn't as involved as I was before. So I said, you're going to be around to the end of the day, so I can leave early. So all right, I said, how about I drop by the house tonight? He lives on Bedford, so I dropped by the house, and I said, okay. I said, I got a little time to think about this. I said, let me do this. It was like a Thursday. I said, give me the weekend just to write something up. Let us have something to work from here.
Yeah.
Let me just put some thoughts on the paper. So I wrote, 5-6 pages of different thoughts, different areas, and sat down and said, boy, you were busy this weekend. I said, yeah, that's kind of important.
Yeah.
And I said, Dave, but let's make a deal. Let's make a promise, though. Thank you for the offer. I said, but at the end of this, if I'm not the right guy, let's go get the right person. That's okay. I'm happy to do it the job I am.
Yeah.
I just want to do what's best for Winter Wyman. If I am, great.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a lot of work to do, I got a lot to learn, and so we went through everything. He goes, boy, and we didn't come to that official probably till a week later.
Okay.
Back and forth, chit chat and talking, making sure. Because a couple of things I said, a couple of things you're not going to like that I think we should do. And he goes, yeah, I don't, but it's your place to run now.
Yeah.
It needs a new vision, it needs new eyes, it needs new. I love having a guy from finance background come in with that discipline and doing all that, thinks about is it a business. Where the rest of the guys were all sales guys.
Yeah.
They never really had the responsibility of running a business before. They did a great job of what they did.
Right.
But I could bring my business experience into that. Certainly, I didn't have the sales experience they had, but I knew salespeople. As I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time with them, kind of picking their brains, what makes them tick, and kind of figure out. So where their egos can get stroked and where they don't get stroked. So everybody's different, of course. But so it was announced in October 2002 at the company meeting, and got around. And Dave had a plane. He was leaving the next morning to Florida, down his place in Naples. I met him outside, gave me a kiss on the cheek. He says, I'll talk to you in 6 months.
Yeah. Wow. Wild.
I said, he says, it's yours to run. And so we went, it was a tough 6 months, because you're learning. We're, still in financial, tough time trying to work our way out of from that recession. As I mentioned before, we talked about space. I moved everybody up from the different floors into one floor so we could fill a floor and all be together versus scattered out to kind of build a team camaraderie around that.
Build a locker room.
I got a lot of pushback on that, and I said, well, I'm sorry, this is not a debate.
Yeah,
I said, we're going to do this.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to run down the street 12 miles and come back again until you move up, go in the elevator and get upstairs, know. So and that did work out. Eventually we did, we started growing again. We did move back down. We started expanding our space again. But I remember, wrestling with so many things, as you're making decisions that it's always the next thought in my mind is, would Dave like this or won't he like this, So you kind of playing a little bit, one arm behind. And I could call him, by the way, but he wasn't safe, but he'd check in every once in a while, but I didn't want to bother him. And so when we did come back, we got together, and he says, hey kid, how's it going? And I go, I'll tell you, Dave, very similar I just shared. I said, it's been good. It's been good. I think we're making some progress here and there. I'm learning a ton. I got always a lot more to learn. But, problem I'm having is wrestling with what you think about what I'm doing. He kind of looked at me, well, what do you mean? And I go, well, making decisions here. I wouldn't make any major decision without getting you a blessing, but I'm making these type of decisions just here and there because and I remember reaching over and putting his hand on top of my hand, and I'll probably fill up when I say this because I do it every time. I never heard anybody say this. He said, Bob, nothing would make me prouder than if Winter Wyman was in the image of Bob Boudreau. I gulped and I said, whoa, I don't think anybody's ever said something quite like
that's
that to me.
powerful.
So he says, whatever you feel is the right thing to do, do it. You know, he says, hey, you're going to make your mistakes. Guess what? My list is longer than yours.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So you have a lot,
That's
of
pretty
catching up to
empowering,
do.
though.
But it was.
Yeah.
That was kind of like, you asked earlier, what was that kind of like, jettison point in your leadership? That was it.
That was it.
It was probably that moment that says, you know what? You take this thing and make it work.
Yeah.
You know, and it's yours to run. It wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't anything like that. But
I think it's
make it happen.
I think it's as an athlete, you've always had a coach.
Yeah.
Or you've always had someone like a captain.
Motivate you, yeah.
Or not even motivate you, but like, sets the vision to a degree. And now it's like, no.
You're it.
It's like the blessing of like, you're the guy.
You got it.
You're the
it.
guy.
And all the eyes are on you.
Yeah,
You know, you come out of your office, I know there's a bunch of eyeballs staring at
Yes.
us and walking down the hallway.
Yes.
And, what kind of mood is he in today? Now, I tell everybody, I'm not high, I'm not low, I'm in the middle. I'm very boring.
Yeah.
People say, you just don't go even teeter. I go, well, do I get upset? Of course I get upset. Everybody gets upset. I just don't show it. It doesn't do you any good. I said, what good would it do if all of a sudden I run out of my office and start swearing and yelling at everybody? I said, no. I said, okay, all right, thanks for telling me that. There are times I get very happy too, and I'm happy, but I'm not going, just try to keep it balanced because things are going to go up and down, and you just got to keep this, even trend to you that people can count on you being that way, and that you're not going to say, oh, is he going to go off the dial today?
Right.
Dave, for all his wonderful qualities, was very mercurial. He'd be up and down.
yeah.
He'd be very visceral about certain things, and that's why he says that's why I always have you there, because I can share that with you, and you can deliver it the way you can deliver it. And I go, well, thank you, Dave, but I always want you to have your voice. You come to every company meeting. I have quarterly meetings. Anytime you want to come and speak, you're so welcomed. I don't want to feel like you. And then I would almost push him to come sometimes.
Yeah,
it's good to hear from the guy.
Yeah.
I need to hear from the guy.
I need you right now.
I need you right now. I need you to get up and talk. So, and again, we just, I was blessed for 26 years. He died a year before I left. Just wonderful opportunity to work for somebody like that.
Very cool. Very cool.
And my friends were always jealous of me. Say, hey, I don't have that in my career.
Right.
And I said, well, it's better to be lucky than good. But I feel, so.
That's a wonderful. It's a wonderful story.
Yeah, and I'd always be eternally grateful for Bob Payne.
Yeah.
Because if he hadn't talked to me in the meeting, Dave.
Made it happen.
Who would know?
The importance
you and
of
I probably wouldn't be
recruiters.
talking.
No,
right
you're
now.
right. You're right. I know, like you get. I think your story is awesome, and the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast was obviously because, well, maybe not obvious, but the podcast was the genesis of it was like people have non-linear career paths, and I meet people like you who couldn't smile any harder about their lives and their career, and it had a lot of hard work, but it wasn't exact. When you graduated UMass, that was not the plan.
No, it was not the plan.
It was not the plan at all, but I also heard from your story there were so many different times where you obviously had the qualities of someone who could be groomed into a leader and become a leader. And I think to myself, you've given advice for so many years, I'm sure, to people. You gave me advice when I got my job as regional vice president, which I was grateful
we had
for.
Lunch,
I'll never forget the hockey locker room. I was like, that metaphor sticks for me.
It sticks.
But when you talk to aspiring young folks at all levels, like what kind of, do you have a boilerplate type thing you tell people to focus on as they're advancing their careers and trying to do more?
Yeah, whether it's their careers or just life.
Life,
in general, Mark.
They're pretty related.
Yeah, they're locked
There is
together.
no-
They're
yeah.
locked together. To me, as much as you have your work life, your personal life, at
They're
least
the
to me,
same.
they're very interesting. My family was part of Winter Wyman's family and vice
Yes.
versa.
Yeah.
They knew my kids, they knew my wife. We'd have get-togethers in my house all the time.
Yeah.
We were just very very social that way. But I think for the most part, I think is that nobody's asking you to be the smartest person in the room. At least I'm not, and I certainly wasn't the smartest. But actually, my daughter Molly, who was at Merrimack at the time, my youngest, she said, "Dad, mind if I tag along?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd love to just hear you talk." I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't do anything revelational, but give up and give a talk. Kind of similar to my things I've learned among my career. Here's the bumps in the road I've hit. Here's some things I've learned. Here's things you probably bump into." But I always typically ended it saying, all of you here are very fortunate. And what I mean by that is you've had success probably most of your life so far. And you've gone to elementary school, middle school, high school, played sports, did drama, did something else, did get involved in something. But for the most part, you've been saying you graduated. Now you went to a very good university, and you're graduating from that. I'm sure you had your ups and downs, but they've probably been minor. So now you're about to enter your next stage in life, your profession, if you want to call it your professional career, and you're going to fail miserably. Congratulations. And they all kind of, they go, in the press is they're going, I like that, And I said, because it's going to happen. You're going to fail, and it's okay. And I used to bring a book. I used to hand it out all to new hires at Winter Wyman. I used to get together with them for lunch. We used to hire a ton at a time and have a new hire lunch. And it's a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. And it's a very short book. And I remember somebody gave it to me while I was CEO of Winter Wyman, and I just read it, probably that afternoon. But basically, the premise of it was, if you're not failing, you're not moving forward. So just keep. And they gave great examples of people who were very successful, but they realized they had to fail in order to get to the next thing. Yeah. Edison's one, knew he had to do it 9,999 times before he invented the light bulb. Well, let's get going. Yeah. Let's get them out of the way.
Let's start iterating.
So, but failing forward is it's such a thing about life in general, whether it's in personal relationships or whether it's family, there are things you're going to fail at, but it's what you do next.
It is.
It's just, so to me, as much as you may get down someday, okay, sulk for a moment.
Yeah.
But
you're human.
Get your ass up.
Yeah.
Go do going. Something about it. Go move forward. Just keep moving forward.
Yep.
Don't go backwards. And so if there's a piece of advice I could give any kid, anybody, whether my age or young kid, is don't worry about failing. And I remember I was fortunate to be asked to speak. I think it was called the Boston Young Professionals Group. They're out of anybody 40 and 40 and under for young professionals. Somebody that I knew that we had chatted with. He said, would you mind come give us? I love hearing some of your stories. So I did. My daughter Annie, Matt's wife. I said, anyway, would you like to come? He said, oh, yeah, I'd come to it. So telling a story about things, right about the tough time at Winter Wyman and getting through all the different. With the whole financial stuff we were going through, is basically talk about integrity, but always being honest, and that's what got us through this, being honest with the bank and all that. And but they got the chance to ask questions afterwards, and somebody asked a question nobody's ever asked me before. He said, Bob, if you could speak to your 40-year-old self, what advice would you give him? And I go, that's a great question. I said, I guess not to worry so much. Back then you worried about it. If I made this mistake, I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to. People are going to look at me differently because I didn't do this like that. It'll all work out if you just keep working. You just keep with good intentions, moving forward. So if I could give now it's easy for me to say. I'm a lot older than you guys are. So life's experience, I don't worry about the stuff that I used to worry about. You just say it's not worth worrying about. And some that just comes with age and experience. But at the end of the day, if you can just kind of step back, you know what? It'll be okay.
Yeah.
It'll just be okay. Yeah. Just give yourself a break.
Yes.
And because I beat the crap out of myself, I know, as I was going through my career and trying to make sure I prove myself and make sure I want to make sure that, when I gave you a report, you could take it to the bank and all that stuff. And I would, do the addition 9 times. And I remember learning this from Bob Berry, that my boss, he said, Phil Tamor was one of my bosses at Millipore. He says, Bob, he was a brilliant guy. And he goes, assume every number you see is wrong until you can prove it right twice. And I always remember that. So if you add it up this way, well, come add it up the other way.
Yeah.
And the same thing with an idea. Say, is this right? Well, it looks like it works this way, but can I come at it a different direction? Will I still get the same answer, So I was kind of like, I got wired that way after hearing him say that.
That's really good advice.
So because it kind of led to accounting, you add the columns up twice or add them, up and down and sideways, but yeah, just make sure you can prove it right twice.
I love it.
So
I love it.
So yeah, so these little bits are different.
And I love the failure piece. It's like it was funny. I've noticed how like the failure piece. I've noticed how. I don't know if it's different you did it too, coaching youth sports. Oh, yeah. It makes you reflect about yourself a lot.
Too, yeah.
Oh my God.
Did I do that?
Oh my, right, like exactly. And
was I that little shit?
Exactly. Or like, you got kids that come off in a sport or they get substituted out or end of a shift in hockey or whatever, and they're sulking.
Yeah.
And what you just said, it's like you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, get a squirt of water,
Yeah,
and jump back over the
get back
boards, and
on.
you get another chance.
You get another
Like no one
shot.
remembers that.
Yeah, no,
It's
remember,
already
the
over.
only-
So
I mean, the only position I always felt bad for was goalies.
Yeah, that
And
is-
The rest of us can make as many mistakes. The goalie makes a mistake and shows on the scoreboard. So
true.
they were a
That's
different
true.
type. I'll
That's
tell you,
true.
and I
Yeah.
had a lot of empathy and admiration for goalies. So
it's the
trust me
truth.
out there.
It's the truth.
But yeah, you know, the whole failing part. I think in our world society, you know, I think I wouldn't say trained or expected to be perfect. You know, in a lot of ways, you know, parents now they have the kids tutored so much. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is bad stuff, by the way, but sometimes take the pressure off them a little
Yeah.
bit. You know, let them be a kid.
Yeah,
let,
right.
Let them just go out. Like you don't see many sandlot games any
No.
longer. I mean, that's all we ever did.
Right.
Between street hockey and playing baseball, sandlot, you learn how to pick teams. You learn how to negotiate when you're in an argument. You learn people skills. You
Right.
know how to navigate through that. And I think now everything's organized, and you show up and you play, but you don't have to worry about anything else.
Yes.
So
And to your point, you really learn them. You're not taught them.
yeah, exactly.
You learn them.
You lived them.
You live right,
you lived
exactly,
them,
which
yeah.
is a huge experience. I
Somebody
know.
else knock somebody else down because you go, okay, you shake his hands and you go, okay,
Yep,
let's
you
go
get-
keep playing.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, those days seem to be not with us any longer.
Yeah, well, you
know?
certainly, if you're trying to parent that way, you're against the grain.
You're against
the grain, but
I'm not saying go over and hit a kid or
No,
anything like
yeah,
that,
but yeah.
but you know, sometimes kids got to be said, you know what, you're not doing a good job here.
Yeah.
Get your butt in gear.
Right.
Get going now.
Right.
Tell a parent, they come down and yell at you. I go, first of all, you don't play for me.
Right.
Your son does, you
Right.
know, and so trust me, I've had those
Yeah.
conversations with parents that I know they're trying to do the right thing. I'm not trying to harm your kid. I'm trying to help them.
Yes.
I'm not here to hurt the kids.
I have
you know?
I got to build this chart, but I talk about their dads like the parents that complain the most about youth sports probably had the least amount of athletic experience.
Probably.
It's directly correlated.
It-
It's like because if they're
living vicariously
yeah,
through their kids,
exactly.
right?
The kids whose parents were accomplished athletes, they
Yeah.
don't say
Yeah.
peep.
Yeah,
They don't care. They're
don't-
watching their kid fail all the time. They're
My-
going perfect.
My dad never went to a tryout.
Yeah.
He says you're going to make this team. All the other fathers would show
Yep.
up because they're trying to want to have a conversation with the coach afterwards.
Yep.
And you make this team on your own
Or
it's up-
not, or not,
You know, it's
right?
up to you, pal.
Yeah, that's
It's
how
up to you.
my
He
dad in
never
the
showed
car.
up.
My
Never
dad in the car every ride home was always like, "Did you have fun?"
Yeah.
Yep. And then that was it.
That was it.
I only got chewed out if I didn't try hard. He
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I'm not bringing you here to,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. No,
tiptoe through the
I think I got a
tulips."
few of those.
Yeah, I got a
too.
couple of those. But hey,
Are you out there for a Sunday skate? Excuse me, was that a hockey game? My
which
father
we
was
all,
kind of a clown.
which
you know?
we all need, which we all need. But
Okay, I got the message.
yes, but Bob, thanks for coming on, man.
No,
Appreciate
no,
it.
Mark,
This
it was
is a
such
blast.
a pleasure. I really enjoyed this. I could have talked, as we could probably
Dude,
go on
we
for
could-
hours.
we could go
but,
for hours. So thanks again.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, best of luck.
Thank you.